The moment my daughter sold my father's watch, she didn't just sell a piece of jewelry. She sold a piece of our history, a connection to a man who had sacrificed everything for this family. But what she didn't know, what none of us knew, was that inside that gold timepiece lay a secret that would tear our family apart and expose truths we were never meant to discover. The watch had been in our family for 3 generations. My father had worn it every single day of his adult life. And now, my only daughter had traded it away for a few $1,000s. The weight of that betrayal pressed down on my chest like a physical force. I sat in my study that evening, staring at the empty space on my desk where the watch used to sit, feeling like I'd lost a part of myself. If you're new to Family Dark Blames, subscribe for more unforgettable family betrayal and revenge stories. Like this video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, here's what really happened. My name is Richard Coleman, and I'm a 52-year-old high school history teacher living in Austin, Texas. I've spent the last 28 years teaching American history to teenagers who couldn't care less about the past, but I've always believed that understanding where we came from helps us understand who we are. That belief was about to be tested in ways I never imagined. I live in a modest 3-bedroom house in the Brentwood neighborhood, a quiet area with oak trees lining the streets and neighbors who still wave hello when they see you outside. My house isn't fancy, but it's home. It's where I raised my children, where I grieved my father, and where I've tried to build a life after my divorce. My father, Robert Coleman, had been a construction foreman in Houston. He wasn't a rich man, not by any stretch of the imagination, but he was the richest man I ever knew in terms of character and integrity. He worked 60-hour weeks, sometimes 70, to make sure my mother and I had everything we needed. He never complained, never took a vacation, never bought anything for himself. Except for one thing, the watch. It was a 1962 Rolex Submariner, and my father had bought it used in 1975 with money he'd saved from working double shifts for 6 months. He'd seen it in a pawn shop window on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and something about that watch called to him. My father always said the watch reminded him that time was precious, that every second counted, and that we should never waste a moment of the lives we'd been given. That watch went everywhere with him. He wore it when he poured concrete foundations under the blazing Texas sun. He wore it when he framed houses in the freezing winter wind. He wore it when he sat on our porch drinking sweet tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. And he wore it when he held my mother's hand during her final days in the hospital, never once letting go, as if his grip alone could keep her anchored to this world. I was 38 years old when my father passed away from a heart attack in 2018. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, the one with the worn armrests and the faint scent of tobacco, when his heart simply gave out. The paramedics said he died instantly, that he didn't suffer. I've tried to find comfort in that, but there's still a part of me that wishes I'd been there, that I could have held his hand the way he held my mother's. When I went through his things, I found the watch on his nightstand, right next to a framed photo of our family. He'd taken it off before going to bed, and he never got a chance to put it back on. That watch was the only thing he specifically requested I keep. My sister, Margaret, got his truck. My brother, Thomas, got his tools. But I got the watch, and I treasured it like it was made of gold, because to me, it was worth more than gold. It was worth memories. It was worth the countless hours we'd spent together, father and son, working on projects around the house, fishing on the weekends, and just talking about life. Every scratch on the crystal, every worn spot on the leather strap, told a story. And I knew all of them. I have 3 children, but only one of them ever showed any interest in that watch. My youngest, Emily. She was always different from her older brothers, more sentimental, more connected to family history. She'd sit with me for hours while I told her stories about my father, about his life, about all the places that watch had been. She loved hearing about how my father wore it when he came to America from Mexico in 1965, how he wore it on his first date with my mother, how he wore it the day I was born, and how he wore it the day she was born. She'd trace her fingers over the crystal, imagining all the moments that watch had witnessed. That's why what happened next hurt so much. It started with a simple phone call. I was grading papers at my kitchen table on a Thursday evening when my phone buzzed. It was Emily. She was calling from her apartment in Dallas, where she'd been living for the past 2 years while working at a marketing firm. Her voice sounded strange, like she was trying too hard to sound normal, like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed a dozen times before calling. "Hey, Dad," she said. "I need to tell you something. I've been trying to figure out the right way to tell you, and there's no good way, so I'm just going to say it." I put my pen down, a red grading pen I'd been using to mark essays about the Civil War. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you okay?" I'm fine. It's just, do you remember that gold watch?" "Grandpa's watch." My stomach tightened like a fist. "Yeah, what about it?" "Well, I was going through some old boxes at Mom's house last week, and I found it. I know you usually keep it in your study, but I guess I must have taken it when I was home for Christmas and forgot to put it back. I wasn't thinking and, Emily, what did you do with that watch?" She took a deep breath, the kind you take before jumping off a high dive. "I sold it, Dad. I sold it to a vintage watch dealer in Dallas. I needed money for my rent. I got a really great deal, $12,000. I know that's not as much as it's worth, but I was in a bind and I didn't know what else to do." I remember the feeling that washed over me. It was like a sickness, cold and hot and shaky all at once. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to tilt, and I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. The watch. My father's watch. The only thing he'd left me. Sold. Like it was nothing. Like it was just another piece of junk to be traded for cash. "Dad? Dad, are you still there?" "Emily, that watch?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "That watch was the only thing your grandfather gave me. It's been in this family since before I was born." "I know, Dad. I know. I messed up. I'm so sorry. But I needed the money. My landlord was going to evict me, and I didn't want to bother you. I'll buy you a new watch, I promise. Something even nicer. Maybe a Rolex, like Grandpa's. I'll find one exactly like it." "You don't understand," I said, trying to keep my voice calm even though I felt like screaming. "Emily, you can't just replace something like that. That watch had history. It had meaning. It had your grandfather's soul in it. You can't buy that." "I know, and I'm really sorry. But maybe this is a chance for us to start a new tradition, you know? I'll give you the money. You can buy something that means something to you and me. Something we can build memories around together." I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to Dallas right then and find that dealer and buy the watch back. I wanted to grab my daughter by the shoulders and shake some sense into her. But I kept my voice steady because she was my daughter, my baby girl, and I loved her, no matter how angry I was in that moment. "What's the name of the dealer?" I don't remember. Some guy in a shop downtown. I can try to find the receipt." "You do that," I said. "You find that receipt, and we're going to get that watch back." "Understand." She promised she would. She promised she'd find the receipt and help me track it down. But I could hear something in her voice, a hesitation, that made me suspicious. My daughter had never been a good liar. She always gave herself away with that little pause before she answered a question, that slight tremor in her voice that betrayed her nerves. And I heard it then, clear as day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every conversation I'd had with Emily over the past year. She'd been distant, always making excuses not to come home, always cutting phone calls short, always avoiding direct questions about her life. I chalked it up to her being young and busy with her career. I told myself that this was normal, that children grow up and pull away. But now I wondered if there was more going on. I called my ex-wife, Patricia, the next morning. We'd been divorced for almost 15 years, but we'd managed to stay civil for the sake of the kids. She still lived in Houston, and Emily often stayed with her when she visited. Patricia answered on the second ring, her voice carrying that familiar edge of weariness that came from years of dealing with our complicated history. "Patricia, did you know Emily took my father's watch?" There was a long pause. "What watch?" "The Rolex. The one my father left me. She said she found it at your house." "I don't know anything about that, Richard. I haven't seen that watch in years. I didn't even know she had it. She said she took it from my house when she was home for Christmas. Said she found it in a box." "I'll call her and ask," Patricia said. "But honestly, Richard, Emily's been acting strange lately. She's been asking me for money. Big sums. She said she had some investment opportunity, but I didn't press her for details." "That's not like her," I said. "Emily's always been responsible with money. She's always been careful." "I know. That's what worries me. She's not the same girl she used to be, Richard. Something's changed." I hung up feeling more unsettled than before. Something was wrong with my daughter, something she wasn't telling me. And that watch was the key to finding out what. The days that followed were agonizing. Emily called me twice. both times sounding rushed and distracted. She said she was still trying to find the dealer's information, but she was having trouble. She said she'd get back to me as soon as she had something concrete. I tried to be patient, but the anxiety was eating me alive. Every morning, I'd check my phone, hoping for a message from her. Every night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining all the terrible things that could be happening to my daughter. I called the Vintage Watch Collectors Association, hoping they might have a record of the watch if it had been sold through legitimate channels. The woman on the phone was helpful, but told me that without a serial number, there was little she could do. I didn't have the serial number. My father had never documented it. The watch was just a watch, a tangible object with no paper trail, easy to disappear into the vast network of collectors and dealers who operated in the shadows. That weekend, I decided to drive to Dallas myself. I needed to see Emily, to look her in the eyes and make her tell me the truth. Emily was living in a studio apartment near downtown, a place I'd helped her find when she first moved. It was a decent area, nothing fancy, but safe enough for a young woman living alone. I parked outside and rang her buzzer. No answer. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I sat in my car for an hour, trying to figure out what to do. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. I watched people walk by, couples holding hands, families with children, all of them oblivious to the knot of fear tightening in my chest. Finally, I called her neighbor, a woman named Sarah who Emily had mentioned a few times. Sarah was a nurse, and she worked weird hours, but I hoped she might be home. She answered on the second ring. "Oh, Mr. Coleman," Sarah said, her voice carrying a note of surprise. "I haven't seen Emily in a few days. I thought she might have gone out of town." "No, she was supposed to come home this weekend," I said. "Have you noticed anything strange lately? Anything out of the ordinary?" "Well, now that you mention it," Sarah said, "Emily has been acting weird. She's been getting a lot of phone calls at all hours. I could hear her arguing with someone through the walls. She seemed really stressed about money. And I saw a man visiting her a few times. Older guy, maybe in his 50s. Drove a black Mercedes. Expensive car. I felt my blood run cold. Did she tell you who he was?" "No, she didn't mention him. But I got a bad feeling about it. The way she looked after he left, you know? Like she'd been crying. I asked her if everything was okay, and she said she was fine, but she wasn't. She definitely wasn't. I thanked Sarah and called the police station in Dallas. I didn't report my daughter missing. Not yet, but I asked if they'd had any incidents involving a woman matching Emily's description in the past few days. The dispatcher said they had no reports, but she took my information and told me to call back if I didn't hear from Emily within the next 24 hours. The clock was ticking, and every second felt like an eternity. I called Emily's workplace next. Her boss, a woman named Diane, answered. Diane had always been kind to Emily, and I hoped she might have some insight. "Emily hasn't been into work all week," Diane said. "She called in sick on Monday, and then nothing. We've been trying to reach her, but we haven't had any luck. I was actually about to call you to see if you'd heard from her." "There was something," Diane said after a pause. "About 2 weeks ago, Emily came in late, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She had bruises on her arms. I asked her if she was okay, and she said she'd fallen. But I didn't believe her. She was scared. I could tell. She was scared of something. I offered to help her, but she brushed me off. Said everything was fine. Scared. My daughter was scared. That word hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd failed her. I'd been so caught up in my own life, my own feelings about the watch, that I hadn't really seen what was happening to her. I'd been too focused on the past to notice the present crumbling around me. I was sitting in a coffee shop near Emily's apartment, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold, trying to figure out my next move, when I finally got a call from her. She sounded exhausted, like she'd been crying for hours. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Dad," she said, "I need you to come pick me up." "Where are you?" I asked, immediately standing. "Are you okay?" "I'm at a motel on the outskirts of town. I can't stay here much longer." "He knows where I am." "Who knows?" "Emily, who is he?" There was a long pause. "His name is Marcus Sullivan. He's the guy who bought the watch. He's not who I thought he was." "Is he keeping you there? Are you being held against your will?" "No, I'm not being held. I got myself into something I can't get out of. I thought I could make money, quick money, to pay off some debts. But Marcus, he's not a watch dealer. He's something else. I didn't know until it was too late. Emily, listen to me. I'm coming to get you." Tell me where you are, and I'll be there in 20 minutes. She gave me the address of a cheap motel on the east side of Dallas. I drove faster than I'd ever driven before. When I found her room, I practically kicked down the door. She looked terrible. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were red and puffy, and she had a bruise on her cheek, purple and angry. But she was alive, and that's all that mattered. I pulled her into a hug and held her tight. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she said, sobbing into my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." "Sure, it's okay," I said. "It's okay. I'm here now. You're safe. Let's go home." The drive back to Austin was quiet. Emily slept most of the way, exhausted from days of fear and stress. I kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, noticing how pale she looked, how fragile. This wasn't the confident young woman I'd raised. This was someone broken, someone who'd been through something terrible, and I was determined to find out what. When we got back to Austin, I made Emily some tea and sat her down at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, the only sound the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. I sat across from her and waited. "Dad," she said after a long silence, "I need to tell you everything. I've been lying to you, and I'm so sorry." I nodded. "Just tell me the truth. That's all I want." Emily took a deep breath and began. "A year ago, I met a man named Marcus Sullivan at a networking event. He seemed nice, successful, well-connected. He said he was a collector of vintage watches and other luxury items. He offered me a deal, a way to make some extra money on the side. He said he'd pay me to find rare watches for him. I'd get a percentage of the sale. It seemed legit at first." She paused to take a sip of her tea. "I started looking for watches. I'd go to estate sales, antique shops, online auctions. I found some decent pieces, and Marcus paid me well. I thought it was a dream come true. Then I found out the truth. Marcus wasn't just collecting watches. He was trafficking stolen goods. He'd buy watches from people who'd stolen them, or he'd sell them to people who'd resell them for huge profits. He was running a huge operation, and I was part of it." "Did you know?" I asked. "Did you know what he was doing?" Emily shook her head. "Not at first. Not until it was too late. By the time I figured it out, I was in too deep. He had photos of me, photos he'd taken without my knowledge. He said he'd send them to my boss, to my friends, to everyone if I tried to leave. He threatened to hurt you and Mom if I went to the police. I was terrified, Dad. I didn't know what to do." "Why did you sell Grandpa's watch?" "Because I needed money to pay off a debt," Emily said, her eyes filling with tears. "I'd borrowed cash from a guy who works for Marcus, and I couldn't pay it back. Marcus offered to take the watch as payment. He said he'd forget the debt if I gave him the watch. I didn't have a choice, Dad. I tried to find another way, but there wasn't any. I was trapped." "Emily, there's always a choice. You could have come to me. You could have told me what was happening. I would have helped you." "I know," she said. "I know I should have. But I was embarrassed. I felt like such a failure. I didn't want to disappoint you. I wanted to fix it on my own, like you taught me." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I taught you to be honest, Emily. I taught you to ask for help when you need it. You don't have to do this alone." "Where does Marcus keep the watches?" I asked. "The ones he's trafficked?" "At his shop," she said. "It's called Premier Timepieces. He uses it as a front. He sells some legit items, but the real stuff, the high-value items, he keeps in a storage unit across town. He doesn't even keep them in the shop. He says it's safer that way." I thought for a moment. "We need to go to the police. We need to tell them everything." "Dad, Marcus has connections," Emily said. "He knows people in the police department. He said so. If we go to the police, he'll find out, and he'll hurt us. Then we need to go to the right people. I know someone." I called Detective Donna Matthews at the Dallas PD. I'd worked with her before on a school outreach program a few years back, and I trusted her. She answered on the first ring. "Detective, this is Richard Coleman. I need to report an ongoing crime. It involves stolen property and potentially trafficking. My daughter has information, and I need your help." Detective Matthews asked me to come to the station with Emily. I think she could tell from the tone of my voice that this was urgent. We made the drive back to Dallas that same day. When we arrived, Detective Matthews escorted us to her office, a small room cluttered with files and paperwork. She listened patiently as Emily told her everything. "I'm not going to lie to you," Detective Matthews said when Emily was finished. "This operation, it's bigger than just Marcus Sullivan. He's connected to a network that extends across state lines. We've been building a case against him for months, but we haven't been able to get enough evidence to make an arrest. He's careful. He doesn't leave a paper trail. I can get you into his storage unit, Emily said quietly. I know where the key is. He showed me once, when he was trying to impress me. He said he kept all his most valuable items there. He didn't know I'd ever use that information against him. Detective Matthews looked at her. That's very risky, Emily. If he finds out you're cooperating with us, he could be dangerous. He's already threatened you. He's not someone who takes betrayal lightly. He can't hurt me anymore, Emily said, her voice suddenly fierce. He threatened my father. He threatened my family. I won't let him do that. I can't live with myself if I let him get away with this. It was my turn to look at my daughter with new eyes. In that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Strength, resilience, a determination that reminded me so much of my father, the man who wore that watch every day of his life, the man who had taught me that sometimes the most important battles are the ones we fight for each other. The police set up a surveillance operation on Marcus Sullivan's storage unit. Emily led them to the building, a nondescript facility on the outskirts of Dallas. She unlocked the unit with the key Marcus had given her and let the police photograph every single item inside. Dozens of watches, necklaces, rings, and other luxury items, all documented with serial numbers and identifying marks. They were still in their original cases, waiting to be resold. There were antique brooches, gold chains, diamond earrings, all of it stolen. The sheer volume of the haul was staggering. Emily described how Marcus operated. He had a network of thieves who would bring him items, and he'd pay them a fraction of what the items were worth. Then he'd clean them, document them, and sell them to collectors around the world. He used a variety of shell companies and middlemen to make the transactions untraceable. It was an elaborate operation, and Marcus was its mastermind. I watched Emily cooperate with the police, her voice firm and steady. She identified items, described people, and provided timelines. She was smart. She'd been paying attention. She'd been storing up information for a moment like this. I was proud of her. I was also worried. If Marcus found out what she was doing, he could retaliate. The police assured us they were protecting her, but I still couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The investigation took 3 weeks. During that time, I watched my daughter slowly come back to life. She started sleeping again. She started eating. She started talking about the future. She got her job back at the marketing firm. She'd been a valued employee before everything fell apart, and they were happy to have her return. She even started making plans for the future, talking about going back to school, maybe getting a graduate degree. But I still didn't have my father's watch. Marcus had already sold it. He'd shipped it to someone in Europe, and there was no way to track it down. I tried to accept that. I told myself it was just a thing, just an object. My father's real legacy wasn't a watch. It was his values, his strength, his love, his wisdom. Those were things that couldn't be bought or sold. Even so, it hurt. Every time I thought about that watch, about all the memories it held, I felt a pang of grief. I didn't blame Emily. I blamed the situation. I blamed Marcus. I blamed myself for not being more present in my daughter's life. The guilt was heavy, a constant weight on my shoulders. The arrest was made on a Tuesday morning. Police had received a warrant and searched premier timepieces in Dallas, finding additional evidence of stolen merchandise and trafficking. They arrested Marcus Sullivan and a dozen accomplices on charges of trafficking in stolen property, fraud, and more. Marcus was taken into custody without incident. He didn't resist. He just smirked, like it was all a game to him. Emily testified against Marcus. I watched her stand in that courtroom, her voice clear and strong, as she recounted everything that had happened. She didn't shy away from her own mistakes. She admitted her debts, her desperation, her poor judgment. But she also exposed the truth of Marcus's operation, the web of lies and manipulation that had ensnared so many people. At one point, Marcus's lawyer tried to discredit her. He asked her about the money, about the debt, about the watch she'd sold. He tried to make her look greedy, selfish. But Emily didn't waver. She met his questions with calm, honest answers. I could see the jury was paying attention. They believed her. They could see that she was telling the truth. Marcus was found guilty on multiple felony charges. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to the victims whose property he'd trafficked. He was led away in handcuffs. I felt a flood of relief. The nightmare was over. We could finally move on. But the restitution wouldn't bring back my watch. That was gone. I'd come to terms with it. I'd made peace with the loss. The watch was a symbol, and symbols could be replaced. The important thing was that my daughter was safe, that she was healing, and that justice had been served. Months passed. Emily moved back to Austin, closer to home. She got a new job at a marketing firm in town and rented a small apartment near mine. We saw each other regularly, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to watch TV together. The scars of what she'd been through were still there, but they were healing. She was smiling again. She was laughing. She was making jokes about the whole ordeal, using humor as a way to process the trauma. One evening, we were sitting on my porch, watching the fireflies dance in the fading light, when Emily asked about the watch. "Dad, do you ever think about it? About Grandpa's watch?" I nodded. "I think about it sometimes. But it's okay. It's just a thing. What matters is you. What matters is that you're okay." "I still feel guilty," she said. "I know you said it's fine, but I still feel guilty. I can't help it." "Emily, what happened wasn't your fault. You were manipulated. You were threatened. You made a mistake, but that mistake doesn't define you. What defines you is what you did after. You stood up. You told the truth. You helped put a dangerous man in prison. Your grandfather would be so proud of you." "I hope so," she said softly. "I know so," I said. "I've been thinking a lot about your grandfather lately, about all the things he taught me. He always said that time was precious, that we should never waste a moment. But I think I've wasted too much time worrying about the past. I missed so much of what was happening in front of me." We sat in silence for a while, watching the sky darken. The stars were starting to come out, scattered across the velvet blackness like diamonds. It was beautiful. It reminded me of my father, of the nights we'd spent camping in the hill country, staring up at the sky while he told me stories about the constellations. "Dad," Emily said, breaking the silence, "I'm going to do something. I'm going to make things right." "What do you mean?" "I'm going to write a book," she said. "About what happened. About the trafficking ring. About how I got caught up in it. I want to warn other people. I want to help them avoid the mistakes I made. And I want to raise awareness about trafficking. It's everywhere, Dad. In every city. People don't know it, but it's happening right under their noses." "That's a wonderful idea," I said. "I think that's exactly what you should do. Use your experience to help others." "I also want to volunteer," she said. "There are organizations that help victims of trafficking. I want to work with them. I want to make a difference." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you, Emily. I'm so proud of you." The process of writing the book took Emily a year. She worked on it every evening after work, typing away on her laptop at her kitchen table. She interviewed other victims, talked to law enforcement officers, and researched the trafficking networks that operated across the country. The book was published with a small press and garnered some attention. She was invited to speak at conferences, to share her story with others who had gone through similar experiences. I watched Emily grow from a scared, broken young woman into a confident advocate. She was using her pain to help others, turning her trauma into a force for good. It was inspiring. It was everything I could have hoped for. One afternoon, she came to my house with a package. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with string. She handed it to me with a nervous smile. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," she said. I unwrapped the package and found a small wooden box inside. I opened the box and gasped. Inside was a watch. It wasn't the Rolex, but it was similar. A vintage watch, gold, with a leather strap. It looked like it had been made decades ago. "I found it at an estate sale in Houston," Emily said. "It's not Grandpa's watch, but it's from the same era. I thought maybe we could start a new tradition. You and me. Something that means something to us." I felt tears forming in my eyes. "Emily, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to buy me a watch." "I wanted to," she said. "I wanted to give you something that symbolizes our relationship, our journey, everything we've been through together. I know it's not the same, but maybe it can mean something new, something fresh." I took the watch out of the box and held it in my hands. It was beautiful. It had a simple, elegant design, with a gold face and Roman numerals. It was a piece of history, just like the one my father had worn. "It's perfect," I said. "It's absolutely perfect." I put the watch on my wrist. It felt different from my father's watch, lighter, but it also felt right. It felt like a new beginning. But then something happened that would change everything again. 6 months after Emily gave me the new watch, I received a letter from the federal prosecutor handling the Marcus Sullivan case. It arrived in my mailbox on a Saturday morning, tucked between a utility bill and a flyer for a local grocery store. I opened it with a sense of dread, afraid of what news it might bring. The letter was brief and to the point. It said that Marcus had given up some of his stolen items as part of a plea deal. Among them was a 1962 Rolex Submariner. They'd traced the serial number, and it matched the one that had belonged to my father. I couldn't believe it. I read the letter 3 times, each time hoping I hadn't misread it. Somehow, the watch had resurfaced. It had been intercepted before it left the country, but it had been sitting in an evidence locker for months, waiting to be identified. They had identified me as the owner. The watch was coming home. I called Emily immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Dad, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "You sound strange." "Nothing's wrong," I said. "Everything's right. They found the watch. The police found Grandpa's watch. It's been in an evidence locker this whole time." I could hear her gasp on the other end of the line. "You're serious? They actually found it?" "Yes. They're sending it to me. I need to go to Dallas to pick it up." "I'll come with you," she said. "I want to be there." We drove to Dallas together. Emily drove while I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the passing countryside. The Texas landscape rolled by, fields of golden wheat and towering oak trees. It was a beautiful day, sunny and warm, a stark contrast to the gray, rainy day when everything had fallen apart. When we arrived at the police station, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. What if the watch was damaged? What if it wasn't the same one? What if all this hope was for nothing? But when the officer handed me the evidence bag containing the watch, I knew immediately it was real. The scratches on the crystal, the worn leather strap, the faded engraving on the back. It was my father's watch. I held it in my hands, turning it over, tracing the familiar markings with my fingertips. It was like reuniting with an old friend. I felt the same warmth I'd always felt when my father was alive, the same sense of connection. "Dad," Emily said softly, "are you okay?" I nodded, unable to speak. I was overcome with emotion. The watch was back. After everything we'd been through, after all the pain and loss, the watch had found its way home. I drove to Dallas to retrieve it. The moment I held that watch again, I felt like I was holding a piece of my father's soul. The scratches on the crystal were still there. The worn leather strap was still the same. It was the exact same watch that had been on his wrist when he took his last breath. I could almost feel his presence, his spirit hovering nearby, watching over me. I brought it home and placed it in a shadow box on my desk, right next to the watch Emily had given me. I didn't wear it. I couldn't. It was too precious to risk losing again. But I could see it every day. I could remember my father, his rough hands, his kind eyes, his endless capacity for hard work and forgiveness. I could feel his love, unwavering and true. Emily and I talked for hours that night. We sat on my porch in Austin, watching the sun set over the Texas hills, and we talked about everything we'd been through. She apologized again for selling the watch. I apologized for not being there when she needed me. Neither of us was looking for blame anymore. We were both just trying to find a way forward. "You know," Emily said, "when I was little, Grandpa used to tell me stories about that watch. He said it had magic in it. Not real magic, but the kind that came from all the people who had touched it. He said it held their stories." I smiled. He used to tell me the same thing. He said the watch was like a library of memories. Every scratch, every mark, it told a story. "I never understood what he meant until now," she said. "The watch isn't what's important. It's the people. It's the stories. And now I have my own story to add to it. Not a great one, but it's mine." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "That's your grandfather talking. He always said the only thing that matters is how you live your life and what you do with the time you're given. You've taken your experience and turned it into something meaningful. That's all he ever wanted for any of us." That next weekend, I invited all my children over for a barbecue. Emily came. Her brothers, Michael and David, drove in from San Antonio and Houston. We spent the afternoon laughing, eating, and sharing memories. The smell of grilled burgers and barbecue chicken filled the air. The kids ran around the backyard, splashing in the inflatable pool I'd set up. It was like old times, like before the divorce, before everything fell apart. At one point, my son Michael asked about the watch in the shadow box. I told him the whole story, from the phone call to the trial to the recovery. He listened intently, nodding along. "You should wear it," Michael said. "You've got the most important thing back. Dad, you got your daughter back. That's way more valuable than any watch. A watch can be replaced. A daughter can't." Michael was right. He was absolutely right. The watch was a symbol, a reminder, and nothing more. The real treasure was sitting right in front of me. My children. My family. The ones I'd almost lost because I'd been too focused on the past to see the present. I'd been so consumed by my own grief and anger that I'd missed the signs that my daughter was in trouble. I took the watch out of the shadow box and put it on my wrist. It felt heavier than I remembered, but it also felt right. It felt like a piece of myself that had been missing for too long. Emily, I said, looking at her, one day, I'm going to pass this watch down to you. Not because I want you to keep it in a box, but because I want you to remember that time is precious, that every second matters, that the people you love are the only thing that truly matters in the end. I want you to wear it and think of all the people who came before you. She started crying. I don't deserve it, Dad. After everything I did. Yes, you do. You made a mistake, and you owned it. You faced the consequences. You stood up to someone who hurt you. That's exactly what your grandfather would have wanted you to do. That's exactly the kind of person he'd be proud of. You're not defined by your worst moment, Emily. You're defined by how you rise from it. The watch has become a family heirloom again. But now, when I look at it, I see more than just my father. I see my daughter, standing tall in that courtroom. I see the power of forgiveness. I see the resilience of the human spirit. I see the future, bright and full of promise. Emily has grown so much. She's now an advocate for victims of trafficking. She speaks at conferences and works with law enforcement to help other people escape from similar situations. She's turned her pain into purpose. She's turned her mistake into a mission. She's written a book about her experiences, and it's been read by thousands of people across the country. She's become a voice for the voiceless. She also started a nonprofit organization called Second Chances, which provides resources and support for trafficking victims. She works tirelessly, often late into the night, coordinating with shelters, lawyers, and therapists. She's helped dozens of women escape abusive situations, providing them with housing, counseling, and job training. She's made a real difference in the world. The man who bought the watch from Marcus sold it to someone in Switzerland. The police got it back because Marcus had kept detailed records of all his transactions. He was a meticulous man, obsessed with documentation. That obsession, at least, helped us find our way back to each other. It also helped the police dismantle his entire network. Marcus is now serving a 12-year sentence in federal prison, and his accomplices are scattered across various facilities. I see my daughter's face now. She's not the same person who sold that watch. She's someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who knows that family is worth more than any amount of money. And for that, I am forever grateful. I see a woman who has been through hell and come out the other side, stronger and more determined than ever. When I look back on everything, I realize the watch was never the real story. The real story was a father and daughter learning to trust each other again. The real story was forgiveness and redemption. The real story was family, broken and healed, stronger for the wounds we survived. It was about two people who found their way back to each other, despite all the obstacles in their path. And that is the true meaning of time. That is what my father was trying to tell me all along. Every moment matters. Every relationship matters. Every second we have with the people we love is a gift we should never waste. We don't know how much time we have, so we have to make the most of every moment. So every morning, I put on that watch. I feel its weight on my wrist. I remember my father. I remember my daughter. And I remember that no matter how dark the blame, love will always find a way to light the path home. The watch ticks away the seconds, each one a reminder of the preciousness of life and the importance of family. There were other moments too, smaller moments, that I remember with equal clarity. The way Emily looked when she first held her published book in her hands. The way she smiled at the book launch, surrounded by friends and supporters. The way she cried when she received her first letter from a trafficking victim who had read her book and found the courage to leave her abuser. These moments were proof that healing was possible, that redemption was real. I also remember the night Emily told me she was moving back to Austin permanently. We were sitting on my porch again, watching the stars, and she said she wanted to be closer to home. She wanted to start fresh in a place where she felt safe. I welcomed her with open arms. I even helped her buy a small house 2 blocks away, a cute little bungalow with a garden and a porch swing. Dad, she said one evening, I've been thinking about something. I want to do something special for you. Something to thank you for everything you've done. You don't have to thank me, I said. That's what parents do. We take care of our children. I know, but I want to. I want to make something for you. Something that symbolizes everything we've been through. She disappeared into her workshop, a small shed in her backyard, and spent the next 3 weeks working on her project. She wouldn't tell me what it was, only that I would love it. When she finally showed me, I was stunned. She had built a replica of my father's watch, not as a functional timepiece, but as a piece of art. She'd used wood and metal, meticulously carving every detail, every scratch, every worn spot. It was beautiful. It was a tribute to my father and a celebration of our journey. This is incredible, I said. Emily, this must have taken forever. It was a labor of love, she said. I wanted you to have something that would always remind you of him. And of us. I hung the replica in my study, right next to the shadow box containing the real watch. They were a pair, the past and the present, side by side. They reminded me of where we'd been and how far we'd come. Life continued. Emily's nonprofit grew, expanding to serve more victims in more cities. She hired a staff, opened a small office, and began running programs that provided housing, counseling, and job training for trafficking survivors. She was making a real difference, changing lives every day. I still taught history at the high school. I found new meaning in my work, sharing stories of resilience and redemption with my students. I told them about my daughter, not as a cautionary tale, but as an example of how a person can overcome adversity and turn their life around. I encouraged them to see their own potential, to believe that they could make a difference in the world. The relationship between Emily and me grew stronger. We had dinner together every Sunday, a tradition we both cherished. We'd cook, talk, and share our lives with each other. Sometimes her brothers would join us, and we'd be a family again, laughing and reminiscing. Her brothers, Michael and David, were both doing well. Michael was a successful accountant in San Antonio, and David was a teacher in Houston. They both admired their sister's courage and strength. They'd seen her at her lowest and watched her rise, and they were proud of her. My ex-wife, Patricia, also came around. She and Emily reconciled, slowly, awkwardly, but with genuine effort. Patricia had always been distant, more focused on her own life than her children's. But she was trying to be better. She attended Emily's book launch, her nonprofit events, and even came to a few of our Sunday dinners. It was strange at first, having her there, but I learned to accept it. We were all trying to heal. There were also difficult moments. Emily would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, screaming, reliving the trauma of her experience. I'd rush to her house, sit with her, hold her hand while she cried. I learned to be patient, to listen without judgment, to be the anchor she needed. The scars were still there, and they would probably never fully heal. But they were becoming part of her story, not the whole story. She started seeing a therapist, a wonderful woman named Dr. Sarah Chun, who specialized in trauma recovery. Emily said the therapy helped her process her feelings and move forward. She also joined a support group for trafficking survivors, where she met other women who had similar experiences. They formed a close bond, supporting each other through the difficult times. One day, Emily came to me with an idea. Dad, I want to do something for the community. I want to host a fundraiser for my nonprofit. A big event that will raise awareness and money. Do you think you could help? Of course, I said. Whatever you need. We spent the next few months planning the event. Emily called in favors from her contacts in the marketing world. I reached out to my network of teachers and fellow educators. We found a venue, a beautiful ballroom downtown, and secured sponsorships from local businesses. The night of the event, I was amazed at the turnout. Hundreds of people came, all of them eager to support Emily's cause. Emily gave a speech that night that brought the audience to tears. She spoke about her experience, her mistakes, her redemption, and her commitment to helping others. She was powerful, inspiring, and utterly beautiful in that moment. I stood in the back of the room, tears streaming down my face, bursting with pride. Thank you all for being here, Emily said. Thank you for believing in me and in my mission. I know I've made mistakes in my life, but I've also learned that we are not defined by our mistakes. We are defined by our willingness to learn and grow from them. Every single person in this room has the power to make a difference. Don't waste that power. After the speech, people approached her, wanting to donate, wanting to volunteer, wanting to be part of her mission. She handled it with grace and humility, thanking each person personally. That night, as we drove home, Emily was quiet. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but also the satisfaction. She had done something important. "I'm so proud of you," I said. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." She reached across the console and squeezed my hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Years passed. Emily became a well-known figure in the fight against trafficking. Her nonprofit, Second Chances, continued to grow, providing resources and support to hundreds of survivors. She traveled around the country, speaking at conferences, giving interviews, and meeting with lawmakers to push for better protections for trafficking victims. I retired from teaching at 67, after 43 years in the classroom. The school threw a big retirement party for me, and Emily was there, along with Michael, David, and even Patricia. They all gave speeches, telling stories about me, thanking me for being a good father and teacher. I was overwhelmed with emotion. "You've done so much for me, Dad," Emily said in her speech. "You gave me a second chance. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You showed me that love is stronger than fear, and I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life." After I retired, I spent more time with Emily and her nonprofit. I volunteered at Second Chances, helping with administrative tasks and mentoring young people who had been through similar experiences. It gave my life new meaning, a new sense of purpose. I was no longer just a history teacher. I was part of something bigger. I also spent more time with my grandchildren. Emily had married a wonderful man named James, a lawyer who had helped her with her nonprofit work. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, whom I adored. I'd take them to the park, tell them stories about their great-grandfather, and teach them about the importance of family. The watch still sits in its shadow box on my desk. Every morning, I look at it and remember. I remember my father. I remember Emily's journey. I remember all the lessons I've learned about love, forgiveness, and the importance of family. The watch is more than a timepiece. It's a symbol of everything I hold dear. There was one final chapter in this story that I haven't shared yet. It happened on a cold winter evening, about 2 years after Emily's fundraiser. I was sitting in my study, reading a book, when I heard a knock at the front door. It was late, almost 10 o'clock, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find a young woman standing on my porch, shivering in the cold. She was thin, pale, and looked exhausted. "Mr. Coleman?" she said, her voice trembling. "My name is Maria. Emily gave me your address. She said you could help me." I invited her inside immediately. I made her some tea and sat her down at the kitchen table. She told me she was a survivor of trafficking, that she'd been referred to Emily's nonprofit, and that Emily had asked me to mentor her. Maria was just 18 years old, and she'd been through unimaginable horrors. But she was here, she was safe, and she was ready to start rebuilding her life. "I don't know if I can do this," Maria said. "I don't know if I can be strong like Emily. I don't know if I have that in me." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You're already strong, Maria. You survived. You got out. That takes more courage than you know. And you're not alone. You have Emily. You have me. We're going to help you get through this." Maria became a regular presence in my life. I helped her get a job, find an apartment, and enroll in community college. She was determined, hardworking, and resilient. She reminded me so much of Emily in those early days. "Mr. Coleman," Maria said one afternoon, "Emily told me about the watch. About your father's watch. She told me the whole story." I nodded. "It's a story I'll never forget." "I want to do something for you," Maria said. "I'm a jewelry maker. It's something I learned from my grandmother. I want to make you a watch. Not a replica of your father's watch, but something new. Something that tells a new story. A story about redemption and hope." I was touched. "Maria, that's very kind of you. But you don't have to do that." "I want to," she insisted. "I want to thank you for everything you've done for me." Weeks later, Maria presented me with a beautiful handcrafted watch. It was made of silver and adorned with intricate engravings. On the back, she had engraved the words, "Time heals all wounds." It was a gift from the heart, and I wore it with pride. The story of the watch, my father's watch, had come full circle. It had been lost, found, and lost again. It had been sold, recovered, and treasured. It had been the catalyst for a journey that had changed our lives forever. And now, it had inspired a young woman to create something beautiful. I still wear my father's watch on special occasions. I wore it to Emily's wedding. I wore it when she gave birth to her first child. I wore it when my grandson graduated from high school. Each time, I feel my father's presence, a gentle reminder of the legacy he left behind. But I also wear Maria's watch. It's a reminder that new stories can be written, that new traditions can be created, and that healing is possible. The past may shape us, but the future is ours to build. Emily's nonprofit, Second Chances, now has branches in 5 cities. She's expanded her staff and her programs, and she's helped thousands of survivors rebuild their lives. She's become a nationally recognized advocate, and she continues to push for better laws and stronger protections for trafficking victims. Her book, Finding My Way Back, has been translated into 6 languages. It's used in schools and universities as part of curricula on trafficking awareness. She's also produced a documentary about her work, which has been shown at film festivals around the world. I've written a book of my own, Lessons from a Watch, about our family's journey. It's a memoir about love, loss, and the power of redemption. It's also a meditation on time and what it means to truly live. Looking back, I realized that the watch was never just a watch. It was a vessel, carrying the stories of the people who wore it. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity. And it was a reminder that time, precious and fleeting, is the most valuable gift we have. So every morning, I put on my father's watch. I feel its weight on my wrist. I remember my father. I remember my daughter. And I remember that no matter how dark the blame, love will always find a way to light the path home. The watch ticks on, marking the passage of time, a constant reminder of all that has been and all that is yet to come. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Family Dark Blames, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.